What's up, guys? This episode of the Kind of Funny Gamescast is brought to you by Omaha Steaks and Tipsy L's. Tipsy L's, as you can see, wearing the beautiful sweater right now. Everyone should have an ugly Christmas sweater this time of year. Tipsy L's sweaters are all about fun, but are serious on quality and construction. Shop now so you have the best selection to choose from and have it in time for your ugly Christmas sweater party. They also have other holiday and collegiate attire and adult onesies, so get on that. You can get 20% off anything you order on the site by going to tipsyelves.com and enter code GAMECAST to checkout. That's tipsyelves.com with code Gamecast. No S, not Gamescast, Gamecast. Then Omaha Steaks. So here's the deal. Last month, Omaha Steaks sent us a family gift pack with 2 filet mignons, 2 top sirloins, 2 boneless pork chops, 4 boneless chicken breast, 4 kielbasa sausages, 4 burgers, 12-ounce package, all beef meatballs, 4 potatoes au gratin. How do you say that, Greg?
Au gratin. Who cooks
All gratin, caramelized apple tartlets, 1 Omaha Steak seasoning packet, plus 4 additional kielbasa sausages, and we had a damn feast courtesy of Greg Miller. Yeah. Thanks, Greg Miller. It was awesome. You can get yours by going to omahasteaks.com, enter code GAMES in the search bar, add the family gift pack to your cart to get a 77% savings. It's the gift guaranteed to be a hit. So yeah, omahasteaks.com, enter code GAMES. Next topic. Speaking of sequels, video game sequels. This year we got a whole bunch of them. Watch Dogs 2.
Yeah.
Titanfall 2.
Yeah. Dishonored
2. Yeah.
Dead Rising 4 is out the week this publishes.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception
Call of Duties and all
yeah.
that stuff. So the topic is, do sequels still have the same type of panache that they used to in terms of you put a 2 in front of a game or at the end of a game and it will sell better?
Sure. Yeah,
we've seen some shit this year.
That was the argument forever, right? The fact of why do you keep making sequels? Well, sequels sell really, really well, and that's why you keep doing it, because you keep expanding on the fan base and da-da-da-da. And then we're seeing Watch Dogs 2 underperform. We're seeing Titanfall 2 underperform. No idea what's happening with Dead Rising 4, but just today because it's not out yet, obviously, but on Colin Moriarty Live, right, somebody hit us up and was like, why is no one talking about that game? And that's always the canary in the coal mine, that something's wrong. Why aren't people talking about this? And it's what we said, earlier about how Halo doesn't seem to be a big a deal. Gears of War didn't seem to be as big of a deal because these were sequels that came out in the years past, and the video game industry stopped and took notice. Whereas it felt like, even Call of Duty this year, not there. Now, granted, not a sequel, but another Call of Duty. You know what I mean? Something else happening in that franchise. And I guess if I'm thinking of sequels, though, Uncharted 4 delivered, and I'm talking about like,
I think Gears did too.
It did, but I don't. I'm talking about in terms of what I think Sony, not critically and not with like hardcore fans, but like with numbers, right? Do we get numbers on Gears?
Gears was third on MPD without counting digital sales or
okay.
bundles, so I would assume it might even been number 1.
Perfect then.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that people been this shattering has been going on for a while. I think it's kind of coming to a crescendo towards the end of the year. Is that the industry might be in for another crash? Not in a specific catastrophic 1983 sense, nor in the we're going to have a 10-year fucking generation like we did last time because of because people, that particular point's really lost on people. The reason that generation was so long is because of the financial crash. Otherwise it wouldn't have been that long. I think that's somewhat obvious, but the thing that I think is happening here is the crash is going to be a readjustment of expectations for AAA, and a truncation of auto sequelizing games. I think that, what Watch Dogs 2 clearly bombed. Titanfall 2 clearly didn't do well. Dishonored 2 clearly didn't do well. So I think that, and even games that, sales-wise. Of course, that's what I mean, sales-wise. Critically, actually, all those games were great. And even games that sold well didn't do as well as expected. Battlefield 1 apparently was on sale very quickly. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare definitely underperformed. I think GameStop said that themselves. So even though like we had this expectation that Titanfall 2, for instance, was going to underperform because of the proximity in which it was released to bigger franchises, and in my estimation, having beat all 3 of them, far better games than Titanfall 2, they all actually underperformed. And so is it because they all we don't often get 3 shooters at the same time? So how do you read into that? But then I'm seeing stuff like Super Data, the marketing firm I was just reading before this, was saying that PSVR, their original PSVR estimates were 2.6 million by the end of the year. Now it's 750,000. It's like there's something amiss here. I don't have enough data or information or insight because I don't have the data specifically. Like, I'm not a Pactor where I get all the MPD data like we used to at IGN and stuff like that, where you can see the numbers to the most granular tenth of the fucking degree. But I feel like it's not only the over sequelization of things that don't need sequels. I mean, I'm of the mind that Watch Dogs maybe didn't need a sequel. I'm of the mind that like you have to make new IP, and then they are, Steep just came out, so Ubisoft is investing in new IP, and I appreciate that. And people are enjoying these games nonetheless. But the chatter about all of these games is actually very low. And people are like, well, you're missing out on the communities, or you're not. And I'm like, no. I'm in the center of all of this stuff on Twitter and all of these kinds of things. People tweeting at me. I know what people are playing because they tweet at me and ask me why they're not playing these games. I get a handful of things that maybe about Watch Dogs and Dishonored, maybe. And the only reason I was getting so much about Infinite Warfare is because I was talking about it. So
yeah, Dishonored we mentioned on the show. That's why it comes up. P.S. I love you. People have been talking about.
Now Dishonored's on the list of games I want to play this fall.
Yeah.
I'm actually quite intrigued by it, and I maybe go back and play the original as well because I never beat it. But
I think the problem here, right, is the fact that AAA development for so long has been that if you want to make a AAA game, you need to make a sequel, you need to make a universe, you need to make a thing,
franchise.
And that I think that you read the tea leaves looking back on Watch Dogs 1, on Titanfall 1. All right, Titanfall 1 underperformed because it was only on Xbox One and it didn't have a multiplayer. We'll fix that with this one. Watch Dogs 1 underperformed because nobody liked the hacking and the character was a bitch. We'll fix that way, thinking that audiences are going to be coming back ready to go. And I think if you look at the spectrum and what's changed over those years, right, is the same thing we all talk about in our lives and what we talk about on the Game Over Greggy show so much, is that there are a million distractions. Like, yeah, sure, maybe somebody did give Titanfall 1 a chance, and when they were talking about Titanfall 1, they were like, man, I would have played this. I would have stuck around longer if it had a single player, or if it had this, that, the other. But by the time you get here, now on top of that person being older, having kids, just being in high school, we'll say, there is... But man, Netflix is delivering with Black Mirror, and man, I want to watch this movie, and oh my God, what's happening in comics, or there's this book I need to read. It's worse than ever, not to mention just looking at your social media as to what are you going to take the shots on and what are you going to bet on. So even the horses that get bet on every year of Call of Duty or Battlefield are less than ever, are taking that dip because there's just more shit going on. There's more things to do.
Yeah.
VR being the same bet.
I think on the other side of that too is the fact that, all right, even if all these things are underperforming, I think that all these games and these AAA franchises have reached a point that unless it is a ridiculous success, it's underperforming because things got so high in the last couple of years because of things like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto and Pokemon Sun and Moon. Shout out to y'all motherfuckers killing shit. That I think that it's causing the problems of these games that years ago, you look at these numbers and you would have been like, oh shit.
Holy shit.
They did great.
Yeah.
But now just video games are in a different place. So not only are there more distractions, but in order to be a success story, you need to destroy everything.
And and it's not even distractions outside of, on the outside walls of video games. It's inside of video games, right? When you are, somebody's just going to, all they want to play is League. All they want to, they have their Call of Duty now. They just want to play the multiplayer. They don't want to get out necessarily and try all these different things and do all these different things, especially when they know they'll be on sale later on. You can pick them up down the road and not worry about it. And when it is, man, Watch Dogs is a blast. Watch Dogs 2 is so much fun. The world's fun. The stories are fun. There's a million fun games. There's a million fun open world games. Is that really what it needs to be? Like, what do you need to do to make waves to get picked up and talked about now? You look at something like Inside, right? Like, that's making it. Uncharted's final Uncharted and is like, top of the AAA spectrum.
Yeah, but I think that even there, though, it's like, all right, cool, those are successes, but it's not like Uncharted is selling, in the same way that a Call of Duty would sell or whatever. So like the bar of success there is different, right? And Inside, very different. So back in the day, sequels were the thing, like especially the number 2. The number 1 game comes out, does well, typically, then the number 2 one's going to do better. What is that kind of hit now? Like, what is the game industry kind of holding on to?
Well, I think that, the unfortunate thing we can't answer the question because, I was thinking, I'm like, well, is it possible Bethesda is happy with Arcane in terms of the way Dishonored 2 did? Because Dishonored 2 is certainly a critical darling, and it's not up to Arcane to sell the games, but these guys are so caught up in their own PR speak that they're never going to admit when a game bombs. So we don't really know what the barometer of success is. In other words, like, for all we know, Dishonored 2 will sell up 1.5 million copies or something, and Bethesda's like, that's great. We made X amount of money on it, and you guys can move on to Prey and be totally done with this franchise, and we're totally content and happy with it. Or Doom did so well that we can make up for the shortfall of our expectations for this particular game. But because I don't want to say dishonesty, but because there's so much shadowy samurai ninja shit going on, in the fucking gaming industry where you don't really know what the hell anyone thinks, and no one shoots straight because all these, a lot of these companies or their parent companies, for instance, ZeniMax or Take-Two or anything, and these are a lot of these companies are publicly traded. You don't want to like show your hand. We can't really answer the question because I don't, to your point, like 1.5. Well, we were talking about PlayStation All Stars, right? Because that kind of is in the people are talking about that again with the rumors, which I don't believe that it's going to be a PSX. That game sold 1 million copies and was that shut that studio down, and 1 million copies in
so much,
and 1 million copies in the NES era, SNES era, and a massive amount of copies sold. I mean, an absurd amount of copies sold. I mean, I can tell you the story about how when Naughty Dog made Rings of Power on Genesis. They sold, I think, something like 200,000 copies of the game, and that's all that were ever manufactured because EA's chip allotment went to Madden, so they couldn't give another go to the game. So that topped out at 200,000 was considered a great success, so that they were able to make another game. 200,000 AAA games today, consider that was made by a small team of 10 people or so, but 200,000 would close any studio of any size if they sold that many copies. And so what I wonder is the common theme between the underperforming games. And if you even want to put Uncharted in there, you even want to put Inside in there, which I'm sure didn't do as well as Limbo. And if you want to put Call of Duty and all these games, the common theme between them is they're all good. That's the weird part about it. So it's not a quality barometer like it was in the early 80s where the things started to collapse because everything sucked when Quaker Oats was making games and all this kind of shit. That's not like that. And it's not like the kind of middling A space that fell out, and that's where we were getting Dark Void, even though that was a Capcom game, or we were getting THQ games,
roster.
Yeah, exactly, like all that kind of shit, and that kind of stuff's gone too. Even though we got Deep Silver, I think fills that void now, and their games, or Homefront was fucking awful, for instance. So like those games still exist, but I'm curious about like what the barometer is by which things are judged, and since it can't be we know these games are good critically, but not commercially. We just don't have enough information to know like how this affects things moving forward, and if studios are going to be pulled off of IP or if studios are going to shut down. And
see, I think we do. I think it's people getting to the conclusion EA got to with Dead Space quicker. I think that is this whole tea leaves metaphor again, right? Oh well, we fixed everything people didn't like about Titanfall. Nope, we're done. You're done with Titanfall.
That's got to be the end.
And don't get us wrong, we loved it. We made action figures. We were stoked. We did all this gear and stuff. People aren't into it, and we don't have the chance to do another one. So work on your Star Wars game, right? Watch Dogs, same thing, where it's like, all right, cool. We went the opposite way. The critics loved it. This didn't do it, and it's not getting groundswell support in a way that like where I was talking about on PS I Love You with like Far Cry 3, where Far Cry 3 came out and nobody cared about it, and then all of a sudden reviews were hitting. People were talking, you're fucking up your game of the year if you're not putting this in there, and that small voice got a lot louder, and it happened.
And it was a great game.
And that's the thing, like the Watch Dogs community, which I'm a part of and on Reddit and stuff, is active, and we're all talking, but it's not making waves, right? Like it's the same thing of what you're talking about, where I'll get tweets of people saying, hey man, I picked up Watch Dogs because of you. But it's not like when we fucking talk about Taco Master, which is a super easy sell because it's cheap and short. This is something people know they need to commit to, and they're like, oh, that sounds cool, but I'm playing a million other things. I don't need to worry about it.
I think that might be the crux, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, and to your point about League of Legends or these MOBAs or what we've talked about in the past, where like, well, Battleborn, of course, Battleborn was going to fail because Evolve failed, and for the same reasons that these games require time and space, and you don't have time or space in AAA gaming unless you are Overwatch or unless you're Call of Duty, which is even falling apart, and
Destiny, and now you see even the Division getting a revival of people being like, oh man, this patch actually fixed what I don't like about it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. To that point, Ubisoft said that the Division numbers are up to where they were at launch. That's incredible, and that's the second game they've done that to in a year. And so they Siege being the other one, so they clearly understand those things. I just don't think we have enough data about like what the trends are moving forward. I think anyone who thinks Titanfall is going to continue is delusional. First of all, I think that's like one of those things where people are like, well, it sold well enough, and it was number 9 on the list with only 3 days. And I'm like, it's over, like.
Yeah, you already saw them starting to back off that statement, right? Like, we're committed to whatever. And then I was like, we'll see what's going to happen.
See, well, what I wonder with that though is going back to what you're talking about with Arcane. Like, I wonder if we're just at a point where games are doing good enough to make a profit, keep the teams running, and if they're doing critically well, that makes the whole team look good, and that just creates a goodwill with games to be able to fund. Whatever, NBA 2K17 that is going to make money.
See, I would make that argument when you're talking about Ubisoft and like UB Arts and the War Game, Valiant Hearts, you know what I mean? Like those ones going on to, okay, you're doing well enough. Keep making cool shit like that. I think that's where it would be now, is these honest conversations with people of like, man, there was a hardcore group that loved Dishonored, and so we took a chance hoping that they would tell their friends and there'd be a great Dishonored 2 swell, and there wasn't. It was a great game. You guys are talented. What else do you want to make? Because if it can be a point of where we can just keep moving, all right, let's, what is your next thing? How committed are they to that franchise too? Of just being like, all right, that didn't happen.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I wonder what that means though, because does that just mean everybody makes indie 2D platformers or RPGs?
No, I think
because that started Rubber Band too.
I know, because that's the problem, is I feel like we're at a place where all of these genres that are popular now, the open world RPGs, the shooters, the indie retro games, it's just like that is what it is. So
There's saturation.
a lot of people stop doing that because Call of Duty wins or whoever wins, then it's like, then
it's
what
not
else
even,
is
I don't
there?
even think it's saying, hey, stop doing what you're doing. I think it's saying we've taken the temperature of the video game buying public and they don't care about Dishonored, but they know it's good. So what's your other stealthy, weird idea you want to make? Okay, great. Go make that. For 2 years, you need to say, hey, these people made the critically acclaimed Dishonored. And then you have that Dishonored fan base. But like, what's my thing with Dishonored, right? Is like, it's like, I look at it, like I played the first one for a little bit and I was like, I don't like this setting. Again, it's too almost medievally or like, fucking grimy. Like, yeah, exactly. Like London grimy. Like if they were to come out and like, hey, it's all this different shit in an environment I cared about with a story I cared about, I'd be like, oh, cool. Like this interests me, right? It's similar with Final Fantasy. Oh, they're driving cars and being normal people. That sounds really cool. Like I'm interested in knowing more about that game, and maybe it pans out that I do it. I think it's just taking teams and, all right, cool. We gave you this world and you tried it twice and that was great. Let's do something else. Let's take everything you've learned and what you know and like, you know what I mean? Like you look at the team that made Watch Dogs and then Watch Dogs 2, like clearly, okay, cool, fuck. Fun protagonists and fun gameplay and fun open world. That's great. What do we do next? Maybe, people still don't seem to be sold on. They want to go hack things. And what is the biggest thing you see in these comments? That it's weird to be a hacker fighting for social justice, but running around shotgunning everything. And I'm sure they're saying you don't need to play it. But Greg's saying he doesn't play it, that he sits on his laptop and hacks every building and never shoots somebody. Okay, let's make a game where either you run around and shoot people or you can't do that. Let's try to funnel this into like, what can we learn and change, but get away from it, right?
Yeah.
Get away from the title and the franchise and the baggage people have.
I think you're probably right, but I think it's even simpler. I'm heartened by what I think is happening, which I think people are tired of sequels. And like in the game space where it's like people liked Dishonored. That was a big game, The fact that Dishonored 2, Dishonored wasn't some small release when it came out in 2012 or whatever it was. People loved that game. And what I'm wondering is like the sequel has to be the right sequel, but not everything needs a sequel. And I'm kind of heartened by that because that's clearly part of it. That's definitely part of it because all of these games are underperforming, all of them.
Yeah.
And they're all sequels. So part of it, I think, is like people might have a subconscious yearning for something new. And you could have just called Watch Dogs 2 something else, and it's got components from the same team, whatever, to your point. And I think that people are it's kind of a franchise fatigue happening very soon. And so instead of taking 3 games for them to realize that they should abandon Dead Space, it takes them 2 games to realize they should abandon Titanfall. And perhaps we can get to a space where, and I know it's not rational from a business standpoint to develop an IP only to abandon it. I know that that's not something that you want to do, and it doesn't make sense. But it seems like it actually might make more sense now because when you're looking around, there are actually more losers than there are winners.
And that's the thing. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It doesn't make business sense for an IP, right? It doesn't. Use it as a piece of art. That not everything needs to be an action figure and a novelization and a fucking cup and a bag and all this other nerd shit that we love for certain things but don't fucking touch for other things, right? Like when Titanfall sent over that giant crate full of Titanfall crap, it was like, all right, cool, but like I would never go buy an action figure for the character I am or even for the Titan. But some people,
sure who my character was in Titanfall.
Exactly, it was Matt Mercer. I don't know. I see him on Critical Role. Don't treat it as an IP. Treat it as this is our game, and it's okay to be a game, and it's also okay to react after the fact to that. And that's what I'm so fascinated with Horizon, where I know we've talked about it before, where you think that's like could be Sony's next like face of PlayStation or whatever. And it's scary to hear them talk about it, where they say that they think that, and they're already working on all these different things. And it's like, I don't know if that's the climate we're in anymore. I don't know if it is going to be that you're going to see people swell behind something to the point that they want everything with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're saying is ideal. That sounds awesome and like good for the art and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that where we're heading is somewhere close to what Colin's saying about the sequel thing. The difference being that I think people are tired of sequels, but now people want universes, the MCU style stuff. And I think that with Marvel games and Star Wars games about to be the next 10 years of our life. Like, I think that that's the type of thing that's going to happen. So instead of it being Dishonored 2, it's going to be Star Wars, where it's like, all right, cool, or Marvel, where it's like, yeah, you can easily just be like, oh, it's another Star Wars game. But Star Wars can have 10 different genres of games. Like, you can take the Watch Dogs hacking stuff and make that work in that universe and have Star Wars be the thing that sells instead of Watch Dogs or whatever. And same thing with Marvel or whatever else it is. I think that we might start seeing games, even when it's not those giant IP franchises, like instead of it being Dishonored 2, have it be just Dishonored subtitle. You know, I think that like that type of stuff could allow just universes to be created, and it's not a sequel, it's another game similar to the game that you liked.
Sure.
I think that there's a ubiquity to the way things are going down in the last 18 months or so that I think you're probably right, and I think Greg's right, and I think I'm right. I think that there's a pie chart of all of these things that it's like a maelstrom. It's just this unfortunate, or maybe fortunate, depending on how you look at it, series of things that are happening at the same time. Games as services, games with stickiness where people play them for thousands of hours. People still play Destiny every day. You know, like Destiny came out when we were at IGN. That was a long time ago. People still play the original Destiny.
People still play Minecraft
every day. People love Minecraft. And the more that these, like if 2 of those games happen a year, then you're just peeling off potential consumers of other games because I'm not above it. There could be a game that comes out one day where I'm like, fuck this shit. I mean, Civilization was that game. Civilization 5 was that game for me. I played that game forever. You know, so at the sake of a lot of things, I eventually moved away because I like to play other games. But man, if Konami was one day like, we're going to release a new fucking Castlevania map every 2 weeks forever in the Symphony of the Night style, I'd be like, see, games, like I'm cool because this is perfect for me. And I think it goes back to also personal taste where it's like, I want sequels for very specific games that I think are perfect. And everything else can go away. The problem is that I don't have the objective knowledge to know what is perfect, only the subjective knowledge of what I think is perfect. And so I think what you're going to have moving forward is a lot more failures. And I think a lot of the failures, unfortunately, maybe for Horizon, probably not because Sony players love proprietary games, but open world games. This is a problem. This is going to be a major problem. I'm telling you right now, in a year or two, people are going to go ahead and be like, enough with the fucking open world games already, because they are reactionary games going back to Fallout 3 and New Vegas and Mass Effect to an extent with the choices and all.
Sure.
That like eventually, and that's why I like games like Inside, because they're just like, we're making a game.
Yeah.
That we want to make, and it took us forever to make it.
And see, this is what's another interesting wrinkle to all this is what you're seeing Disney do with their properties, which is go after Insomniac, which is go after Respawn, which is go after, okay, cool,
Telltale.
like we're going to give you this thing to make a game with. And Telltale's a great example, right? Because every Telltale game is the same for the, it's nuts and bolts. And so when they put out Wolf Among Us, and no one really, I mean, Wolf Among Us is like art for art's sake, you assume, right? Hey, who loves Fables? Well, a lot of people, but I don't know if they want to go play the game. And then people play the game, and then they're like, where's Wolf Among Us 2? And it's like, it probably didn't sell that well. The fact that there's a, season 3 of The Walking Dead, right? And Troy and I just did an episode of Batman. Everybody's talking about Batman, and I'm talking about on the episode, as if season 2 is a foregone conclusion, because you assume it is. It's Batman. Why would you go back to this thing that underperformed? You take these IPs and put them on there. And when you start doing that, that's what's going to be interesting to see. Insomniac, not that I'm saying, God, Ratchet & Clank was so fucking good, and it sold really, really well. So this isn't like, doom and gloom, but studios picking up things, open world's the craze, but we know we're going to burn people out unless we put it Star Wars open world or Spider-Man open world, and you get to make these games up here like Game Dev Story that make you the money, but then down here you get to go make an Inside or a AAA game that you really are passionate about and you want to go make.
Yeah. Very, very, very interesting times. Let us know what you think in the comments below.
And if you're in your car listening to this on like an MP3, just yell out the window, we'll hear.
Yeah.
Hey, you! Well, Tim, interesting question. I'll tell you what I... Oh, God!